everything to you, so I can't do it anymore.
It is recording now, though. Yeah.
Very good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. I'm somewhere in the desert. I'll turn this over. This is kind of what the middle of nowhere looks like, and was a lot of the inspiration for me to start Global Chamber, because this feels like not connected to the world. There's no ocean, there's no harbor. The airport in Phoenix, Arizona is called Sky Harbor, and that's kind of cool, except there's very few direct flights. There's still very few direct flights, and so the connectivity to the world requires something else. And that's what the Global Chamber is intending to do. Some of what we do is related to people and how they view the world. Most of what we do is related to connecting people to opportunities, connecting them to clients, connecting them to resources, connecting them to investors, connecting them to investments. I'd like to kick this meeting off. I'm going to introduce our main speaker, Sam, but I want to just make 30-second comment, 60-second comment, because this topic, LGBTQ opportunities, honestly, I didn't think would be very controversial, but I had one of our team members make some comments to me that I thought were completely inappropriate, that represent sort of the side benefit, I think, of Global Chamber. A lot of why I started Global Chamber was being an international person. I felt very alone. I wanted to have a connecting network, and I wanted to be able to access clients and people. That's what drives us. However, one of the things that also drove me was the fact that I couldn't get a woman involved with DuPont Korea when I worked with DuPont, because they told me women aren't good for business and don't belong in business. Also, I was told when I was running a joint venture for DuPont in Japan that women could never sell to Toyota. When I asked them to put Kimachi-san, who was in our Osaka office, as part of our sales team, eventually they agreed, and eventually she became the best salesperson the company ever had. But there's a dogmatic, wrong-headed thinking that's everywhere in the world that needs to change, that is changing. However, it's not changing fast enough. So when one of our team members told me that his group and his area cannot support us supporting LGBTQ people for whatever reason, is wrong. That is totally wrong thinking. It's wrong dogmatism. It's wrong thinking about what opportunities are available in the world. It's wrong to label people as good or bad. It's wrong to label opportunities and being judgmental about them because of your own old-minded thinking. And so what we as leaders need to be doing in Global Chamber and outside is to have cleaner thinking, more modern thinking, less judgmental thinking, and we will, and we are. And I appreciate this conversation very much, and I apologize if I'm being dogmatic in my thinking, but that's the way I feel. That's the way Global Chamber is, and that's the way Global Chamber will be. We focus in on giving people a chance to be successful. We focus in on opportunities wherever they are, and without being judgmental about right or wrong. That doesn't belong here. We will not allow it. We will talk about today opportunities in a market segment that's amazing, and it's growing, and it's fantastic. And Sam, thank you so much for bringing these opportunities to us, and hopefully it becomes part of an ongoing conversation. I turn it over to you, your leadership, your globalness, your positivity, your enthusiasm. I love everything about what you're doing. I love your bringing this topic here today to us and all the other topics that you've brought to us in the past, and look forward to continued collaboration. What would you like to talk about today?
Hello, Doug, and hello to all of you who have so kindly connected to this conversation today. We started at a much higher number than where we are today, so there may be some technical issues. There may be other issues that are getting in the way of people connecting to this conversation today. But I think that the most important part of everything that's happening over the next 45 minutes or so is exactly what Doug talked about. So, first of all, Doug, and to the Global Chamber team, Cesar and Jim, and others who are supporting this work all over the world, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for your allyship. We consider members of the LGBTQ plus community around the world, those who do not identify with this sexual orientation or gender identity, as allies and supporters, and they're very much needed, just like any other minority group needs the support of others to make sure that their voices are heard, that the work that they do is recognized, and that the contributions to society, and in this particular case, because we're talking about international trade, commercial trade all over the world, the contributions to the economy that all of these communities make is very important to keep in mind. It is very important to recognize, and it's very important to engage with. And I think that that's one of the most important conversations we could have today, particularly as we're only 2 days away from the 28th of June, which is the day that is recognized worldwide as LGBTQ plus Pride. That is a celebration that we'll be talking about a little bit more over the next 45 minutes. But again, thank you, Doug, and thank you to the Global Chamber for providing the space to talk about a very important topic. So, by way of introduction, just to tell you a little bit more about myself, my pronouns are he, him, and his. I have the privilege of serving as a president of the Grupo San Cobian. We're involved in entertainment, artists, concerts, musical events, Tequila Mil Demonios, and more recently, the International Association of Boutique Hotels. And with all of that in mind, we're delighted to have an opportunity to come to you today as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, an openly gay cisgender man. I think that these are very important conversations. I am not the ultimate expert in these conversations and this topic. And I know that there are other members of the community present here today and allies and supporters. And you're welcome to make comments where necessary, because this is really more of a conversation than anything else. But we'll be sharing with you today, over the next 45 minutes or so, important information about the LGBTQ plus community and the community as a market for multinational companies. Aside the moral issues or the religious issues or any other issues that are associated with whether people want to recognize the importance of this community, in some cases even the existence of this community, the reality is that we exist. We will not be erased. And more than anything else, we have an opportunity to contribute to economies, global economies, in countless countries around the world, that Global Chamber members would do well in understanding exactly what those opportunities might be. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with amazing corporate groups like American Airlines, Hilton Hotels and Resorts, and also nonprofit global health organizations like the American Heart Association. And I've done this corporate social responsibility, social impact, human rights, social justice, and community development work, with these companies, working on projects all over the world. And over 500 cities later, 58 countries, I have learned a few things. And more importantly, what we've learned is that there is an opportunity to recognize, to respect, and to treat with dignity every single individual in this world. We might not agree with who they are, but that's not what we're here to do, right? It is not my job to define who you are, whether, as Doug very well said, decide or make a statement on whether what you're doing and who you are, who you represent, the community you're part of, is right or wrong. I am here to have a dignified interaction with you. And in the case of the Global Chamber, explore the possibilities of being able to do business together. So I think it is important that we keep that in mind as we go through these conversations today. I do not see Andres Mejia connected to the call. He was our other guest speaker today. So Andres, if you're there and I can simply see you, Maybe you say hello. If not, then Andres was traveling today and he was going to try to connect to the best of his ability to the call. He may be having troubles with that. So let's just hope that he can connect here in a few minutes. So when we talk about the LGBTQ plus community, and I think that it's important that we start from the very beginning. I think it's important that we identify the letters of what we call, half jokingly, half seriously, the alphabet soup, right? So we talk about the L and the G and the B and the T and the Q. And in different countries, actually, that acronym changes a little bit depending on their culture and their society. But in general, when we talk about this community and the letters associated with this community in this acronym, we're talking about L for the lesbian community, G for the gay community, B for the bisexual community, T for the transgender community, and Q for the queer community. So in general, lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, that is a grouping of individuals who have a sexual orientation that is not heterosexual. And news to you, if you didn't know this, heterosexual is also a sexual orientation, right? As human beings, we all have sexual orientations, and it is important that we recognize that over the millennia, because we are not a new phenomenon. Over the millennia, there have always existed LGBT individuals, and that's one of the reasons why it is important to have this conversation. We're part of the fabric of communities, of societies, of cultures all over the world. In the case of transgender individuals or queer individuals, they are more on the side of identity, gender identity side of the community, meaning that while we understand in more recent modern times, and we have led to believe that there are only two genders, the reality is that, not from my perspective or the perspective of anybody who hasn't done the studies, who hasn't really understood the reality of many societies around the world, the reality is that society and cultures all over the world have recognized more than the binary of male and female. And in some cases, there are individuals who believe in their heart of hearts that they were assigned a gender at birth that does not correspond with how they feel. And of course, in the very limited time that we have together today, it's going to be impossible to go into the depth of what that really means. But I wanted to at least give you an opportunity to understand exactly what these letters in this acronym stand for. And last but not least, queer. These are individuals that really do not live by any of the norms. They're not necessarily rebels. They're not necessarily wild people. They're not necessarily, definitely not trying to not conform to living in peace in society and being contributing members of society, but they also identify themselves as something or someone rather outside of some of the norms that have been indicated by society. So with that as a background and understanding that, of course, there's intersectionality, in all of this. There are individuals who have different sexual orientations and gender identities. There are individuals that, on top of those different sexual orientations and gender identities, also have different races, they have different nationalities, they have different physical and cognitive abilities, and a number of other diversity elements that identify them and make them and all of us who we are. What it's important to understand is that at the end of the day, we are human beings that are trying to live, our best lives and contribute to society in the best way we can. And many of us are doing that through international trade, through commercial enterprise, and being entrepreneurs, providing services and products in our countries and across borders. And it's one of the reasons why we're involved with the Global Chamber. So in terms of global demographics, let's get a little bit deeper into the community so we can understand exactly what the potential is here. There are about 400 million people globally that identify as members of the LGBTQ plus community. So that roughly translates into between $3 to $3.9 trillion in purchasing power. And I'm going to pause here for a moment because I think that's the foundation for the conversation today. When we are entrepreneurs, when we're engaged in commercial ventures, it is important that we understand, what is it exactly that we're trying to do? What market are we trying to reach? And what is the spending power of that market? So in most cases, we understand, that there are certain products and services that men are more likely to purchase. There are products and services that women are more likely to purchase. There are products and services that families, as family units, however you define family, may be more likely to purchase. So it is important that when we try to put together products and services, that we understand exactly what market we're trying to reach, number one. And number two, that we clearly understand what is the spending power of that market. So I think it is important that we start that from the very beginning and we establish, once again, according to studies, and there are organizations like We Forum, in fact, Vogue Business, Forbes, China Daily, and a number of other publications that have done this research have landed in this number or this figure of $3 to $3.9 trillion in purchasing power. So it is important to understand that because, number one, it is important to understand the potential for doing business with the community. But more than anything else, and this is where I go back to my social justice background, it is important to also understand that in order for the community to reach the point where we have reached, that kind of spending power at the moment, we have had to get over a lot of legal hurdles or challenges. For example, saying gender marriage did not exist and still doesn't in many countries. There are anti-homosexuality laws in many countries, and there are, in fact, 62 out of 193 UN member states, meaning countries, that still criminalize homosexual behavior. So you cannot be openly a member of this community without being punished by the government. So in spite of all these challenges, though, we are a force to reckon with. And companies, multinational companies, would do well in paying attention to this market. Because I'm based in Mexico, I'm originally from Puerto Rico, but by way of Canada, United States, and now I've had the opportunity to live in Mexico for the last 4 years. I will be interspersing a little bit of the global information with a few pieces of information, some data of what's going on here in Mexico. So for example, in Mexico, 5.2 million individuals identify as members of the LGBTQ plus community, with approximately 74.4 billion Mexican pesos in household income. Same-sex marriage is legal in Mexico since 2010 in nearly all the states, particularly Mexico City, Guadalajara, and a number of other cities and states recognize. There are a few exceptions here and there, but the vast majority of the states in Mexico recognize same-gender marriage and other freedoms for members of the LGBTQ plus community. It is important to also understand that, excuse me, that there are a number of different events that are identified with the community. And you probably know, in fact, June is LGBTQ plus Pride Month, which means not pride from the perspective of the 7 cardinal sins, but really proud in terms of being proud of who we are as a community, the progress that we've made, the freedoms that we have gained, the recognition that we have gained, and more importantly, we're very proud of the contributions that we have made to society in general. And that in general is what we celebrate during the month of June. That celebration dates back to the 28th of June of 1969, where in the United States, homosexuality was still banned. It was illegal to be, behaving in that way or presenting in that way publicly. And police brutality and oppression and aggression was very commonplace until that day, 28th of June, when a number of patrons of an establishment called the Stonewall Inn in New York City rebelled against this oppression. This is why we celebrate on the 28th of June and throughout the month of June, the LGBTQ plus Pride Month. So here in Mexico, there are tons of opportunities for entrepreneurs and business persons, to participate in the LGBTQ plus market, particularly because of the freedoms, because of the liberties, and the welcoming spaces that the Mexican community, the Mexican society has offered for members of the community in many places around the country, but particularly Puerto Vallarta, which is generally considered the Mecca of the LGBTQ plus community in this country, and one of the few destinations around the world that really have become a very, very welcoming destination, a very welcoming space for members of the community. As we continue to talk about, the economic power and consumer behavior, there's something that it's important for entrepreneurs to understand is that there's something called global pink money. So what that means is pink lavender is usually associated with the community. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, $3 to $3.9 trillion annually is the spending power within the community. And if we take, for example, one of the top economies in the world, when we talk about the United States, in the United States alone, that spending power, and more specifically, disposable income, sums up to $1 trillion. But let's talk about disposable income for a moment, because sometimes there is a wrong understanding that members of the community have more money than anybody else, and they have money to waste, and they have money to spend. And the reality is that it's important to understand what disposable income means. And I am not, a professor in economics, but I invite you to take note of this disposable income term and do a little bit more research on it. But in general, disposable income means that because in general, members of the community have either no children or a smaller number of children because of their financial obligations tend to be reduced because, particularly in the case of gay males, they are a double income, no kids kind of household. The opportunity that a lot of these households have is to not only take care of their expenses, but they generally have a little bit left over. And that's what this disposable income is all about. So after you have paid your mortgage, after you have paid all of your obligations, all of your bills, after you have saved, for your savings and your retirement and all of the basic necessities that you need to take care of with your income, then there's generally within the community an opportunity to have some left over. And that is what, in very general terms, disposable income means. And what does the community do with that disposable income? Well, there are a number of different things. And once again, it is important that we understand that because that's where we start to think about what do I have that maybe I need to explore the possibility of marketing a little more specifically to the LGBTQ plus community. So that is an important part of it. And the reality is that disposable income, and we'll get into a little more detail on that here in just a moment, it's generally spent in travel, tourism, luxury goods, and a number of other products and services that are not necessarily, the most needed basic products and services that a household might need. So it might be not only luxury goods when it comes to health and wellness, when it comes to vehicles, when it comes to houses, when it comes to a number of other goods, merchandise, and products and services, as I've mentioned before, that this community in general has the ability to have access to at a higher price or at a higher quality than the rest of the mainstream population. So I think that's an important term, that's an disposable income, and that's an important concept that I would invite you to continue investigating, and that I'll be happy, to have an offline conversation with you about to learn about that a little bit more. Because I promised that we were going to get a little bit deeper also into the Mexican market. Let me just share with you, there's an estimated LGBTQ plus market of about 66 billion, and this is from back in 2019, contributing over 80 billion to the GDP of Mexico. In general, LGBTQ plus travelers in Mexico spend $1,700. We're talking about dollars versus $780 by other travelers in Mexico who are not members of the LGBTQ plus community. So that it's more than double. That's more than double in travel and tourism spend here in Mexico by LGBTQ plus travelers. In 2022, 29% of Mexican consumers see LGBTQ plus support as customer attraction, meaning support of the community means that in general translates into a market opportunity to the community. And that when that support exists, then it's very visible to the community, then at least 20% would definitely buy from that brand. And we'll talk about brand loyalty here in just a moment. When it comes to travel and tourism, in North America alone, LGBTQ plus tourism will be hitting $170 billion by 2030. And that is, I'm going to repeat that number because it's really a staggering number. By the 2030, by the year 2030, tourism generated by the LGBTQ plus community in North America, Canada, the United States, and Mexico will be hitting $170 billion. There are, and it is important that we clearly understand, a number of socioeconomic and political issues happening at the moment. So of course, I'm not making any predictions. I am not making any guarantees. It is important we understand, that these are studies that have been done over the last few years, and that some of the, global events that are happening at the moment, may impact. But at least that is the forecast. So when we take a look at what's happening very specifically in the LGBTQ plus community, travel and tourism tendencies or trends, it is important to keep this in mind because it's probably one of the biggest areas of growth for this community. It's also important to talk about consumer preferences and risk. And very specific to Mexico, once again, I keep coming back and forth, right? I want you to learn more about Mexico as much as you can. 57% of Mexican LGBTQ plus members, travelers, prioritize safety, and 55% price. And it is important to keep this in mind because at the end of the day, we not only want to interact with the community from a transaction perspective, but we also want to develop relationships. So while it is important, that the price is appealing, just like price may be appealing to all other communities, there are other things that we also appreciate, and it's the opportunity to travel to a destination when it comes to specifically, the tourism industry, travel to a destination and feel safe in that destination. But more importantly, when it comes to other products and services, that those who are selling, who are advising, who are counseling on those products and services, that they clearly understand who we are and how we behave and what it means to be a member of the community, so we can, as salespeople, as sales advisors, and others who are involved in these commercial transactions, understand exactly the language that we need to utilize in dealing with customers or clients that are part of the LGBTQ plus community. So this is very specifically and probably the most important part of our conversation today, why multinationals should invest in the community. Well, investing in the community presents clear financial benefits for companies, ranging from increased revenue to improved brand loyalty and market differentiation. So I'm going to give you point by point a few examples. There's a lot of information here, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you one-on-one after the session over the next few days, over the next few weeks, to talk about this in detail. But for example, once again, we mentioned briefly, right, that there is a spending power of $3 to $3.9 trillion annually globally. In the United States alone is about $1 to $1.1 trillion, and Mexico is about $74 billion. And very specifically in the travel, hospitality, beauty, and fashion industries. Excuse me. And on the other hand, companies that learn and know how to market to the community, they obtain increased brand loyalty and consumer trust. So, for example, 71% of the LGBTQ plus community consumers say that they're more likely to support brands that openly support their rights. So, getting involved in corporate social responsibility programming and events and other opportunities to to get closer to the community, not only as a market, but also as a community, not only from a transactional perspective, but also from a relational perspective. It's something that companies would benefit from. And LGBTQ plus individuals and allies, as consumers, are more loyal to companies that take authentic stances on inclusion. And that is especially true of younger generations like Gen Z and millennials. And we have, great examples with companies like Apple, Nike, and Ben and Jerry's, who consistently rank very high among these type of consumers. We also have examples of what's going on here in Mexico. We'll talk about that in just a few more minutes. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us because we still have more information coming up that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. Also, and the third point in this part of our conversation is that companies enjoy outperforming in financial markets when they are considered LGBTQ plus inclusive companies. So, for example, the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBTQ plus organization, advocacy organization in the United States, has something that is called the Corporate Equality Index. And companies that participate in that CEI, that Corporate Equality Index, outperform S&P 500 in long-term returns. And diversity and inclusion policies in the workplace correlate with stronger financial performance, especially in innovation-driven industries. And when it comes to research, firms with inclusive practices are 25% more likely to have above average profitability. Diverse companies are more resilient and better at capturing new markets because they recognize the talent and the value of individuals who come from diverse backgrounds, who are part of their teams. It's also important to talk about not only the community as a market, but also as potential talent for your companies. So competitive recruitment and retention is an important consideration. So it is important to keep in mind that inclusive companies tend to attract talent, top talent, and reduce costs associated with turnover. I can speak from experience. I have worked with a number of different organizations, short term, but I have also been with other organizations. One of them specifically, I spent 25 years of my career with American Airlines, 6 years of my career with the American Heart Association. And I think that in many countries, in many societies, to learn that somebody has been with a company for such a long time or longer periods of time, it's unheard of these days. So there is a lot of loyalty and reduced turnover when companies are welcoming companies and companies that create safe spaces for their team members, particularly team members of underrepresented communities, any community in general, but specifically the LGBTQ plus community, which is what we're talking about here. When we talk about, for example, Gen Z and millennial, job seekers in these generations are 3 times more likely to choose employers committed to diversity. And LGBTQ plus friendly companies, they have a reputation for improving workplace morale and increase employee productivity. When it comes to market, which is our 5th point in our conversation today, market differentiation and first mover advantage, in emerging markets like Latin America, few companies have deeply invested in LGBTQ plus community engagement. And that's why it's important that we have this conversation today, because brands that do that well, they do enjoy early loyalty and word of mouth growth, meaning the adaptation, the acquisition of the products and services of these companies, particularly companies that are new to the market or are providing new products and services, they really enjoy better results, better outcomes when it comes to trying to connect with the LGBTQ plus community as compared to the general population. Marketing to the community with authenticity helps companies stand out in a crowded marketplace. And I believe that Jem is here somewhere, and she's going to help us play some videos and take a look at some of the work that local Mexican companies have done, one company in particular that we want to share with you. And one other point, and probably closer to the end of this part of our conversation today, it's broader market influence. So that's what companies can enjoy. So the LGBTQ plus community influences broader cultural trends in fashion, entertainment, food, travel, and technology. So advocacy often shapes public discourse and pushes innovation in advertising and storytelling. And that's why counting on the experiences, life experiences of the LGBTQ plus community, which in most cases, if not all cases, are very different from the experiences, the life experiences of the mainstream community, it is so important. And it helps when it comes to cross-segment revenue growth, meaning that you have products and services that you're trying to put out there for the general population. But if you're looking for opportunities to put, some of these products and services and market them specifically to other communities, you would do well in reaching out to the LGBTQ plus community, whether it is team members or staff members or focus groups of potential clients and customers, because we bring as members of this very diverse community life experiences that are broader in general than that of the general population. So as a summary of what we've been talking about here, what are the benefits of marketing and really developing relationships with the community? Well, high consumer spending, strong brand loyalty, the ability to have strong top talent, inclusive workforce, market differentiation, and a resilient reputation. And who wouldn't want that, right, for their businesses? Who wouldn't want to make sure that they have businesses that are recognized for being inclusive, for creating safe spaces for all of their team members? And we're not just talking about the LGBTQ plus community, but we're talking about all of their team members. And that's something that is very, very important for the opportunities, particularly for small to medium-sized companies that are looking to venture out and say, next frontier, who do I want to reach out to? And the difference between trying to do the right thing by the LGBTQ plus community and working with that community as a market for multinational companies is that the LGBTQ plus community exists all over the world, right? So when you take a look, for example, at multicultural marketing and other marketing efforts in the United States, it's probably one of the best examples that I know. The marketing efforts sometimes are segmented into Hispanic or Spanish speaking or Latinos. It's segmented into women. It's segmented into families. It's segmented into people with physical and cognitive disabilities. It's segmented into African Americans or people of African descent. It's segmented into Asians, Asian Americans, or people of Asian descent. But the reality is that those categories do not exist necessarily in all the countries all over the world. However, there is one market segment that you can always count on existing in almost every single country around the world, and that is the LGBTQ plus community. So with a few cultural and language and other nuances, the vast majority of this community is a community that we share this fabric all over the world. And the reality is that when you find, that product or service that you could market to the LGBTQ plus community, you're going to find a community that will support you not only in your initial market, that city or country where you're launching your product or service, but you're going to find a global community that will soon find out whether you are doing right by the community and if you really have a good products and service, and it could spread, like wildfire. So I think that's one of the things that you definitely want to keep in mind as you're trying to do, some of this work and putting out, your great products and services and promoting international global commercial trade all over the world. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment because we have in total about 55 minutes for this conversation. We're into minute number 42, and I would like to go ahead and answer questions if I can answer them. If not, then we'll take note of them and have that conversation and do a follow-up as needed. Are there any questions, any comments? I don't know, Jem, if you are on the call and maybe facilitating a little bit of okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm not in the community myself, but I know a lot of people that are in the community, and a lot of people from the community seem to find me, which is nice. I feel very flattered by that. I also work with a lot of inclusion, but the question is, like if I'm not in the community, I mean, obviously, I like what you said about getting proactively involved in the community events, that would help. But would it not come over? I mean, I haven't really started marketing to this market because I don't want it to feel inappropriate or, do you know what I mean, sleazy or any of those things. I don't want to be doing it for the wrong reasons or to be seen to be doing it for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely. So your question is around maybe, or your comment around what would be an authentic way of getting started down that path?
Yeah.
Excellent. Great question. So the good news is people have been naturally gravitating towards you, right? So two things that you might want to explore doing. Number one, think about what is it exactly that you're doing that makes it relatively easier for members of the community to reach out to you and work with you. And number two, be intentional about asking those individuals who are reaching out to you and working with you about, what is it exactly that you're doing right that makes it easier for them to reach out to you and to end up working together. I think that's an important question because when we're kind of in limbo and you're like, oh, this is great, but I don't know exactly why, find out why. I think that's a very good first step, right?
Yeah.
And then number two, I would say invite those individuals that are reaching out to you to work with them as a focus group, if you want to call it that, for ideas on how I cannot pretend that I know how every single market and community works, right? And I don't know exactly what part of the world you're in. So those individuals might be that bridge between the work that you do, the products and services that you offer, and the community. So before you go into, grand marketing schemes, have a conversation with them and ask them to help you understand. I have, product ABC. I think it's great. Of course, it works. My general market customers love it. What do I do to provide this great product, to the market, the LGBTQ plus community in a way that makes sense, that is authentic?
Thank you. I've got to go because somebody's made me dinner.
Okay. Well, bon appetit. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the conversation we've had today? Okay. Well, why don't we do the following? We have a guest speaker missing, and we're so sorry about that. We kind of thought that we were not going to be able to get him because of travel issues. As you know, travel has been going a little crazy over the last few days. So first of all, in absentia, I would like to thank Andres for at least trying. We had a call yesterday and preparing for this session today. But maybe what we'd like to do is we'd like to go around the room and see how many of you are working with the community already and how you're doing that. I'm going to put you on the spot. Coco already made a comment. I know that we have Michael here and we have Virginia. I've had the opportunity to meet them both. So please go ahead if you have any business cases or any experiences or anything you'd like to share.
I'll share something, Sam. So it was 17 years ago when I was at university doing a master's degree, and I did a module called Gender, Sexuality, and Culture. And I was the only straight white guy in the room. And it was brilliant because for the first time I was in the minority. And I just listened. And it was the first trans person I ever met. It was called Harry. And it just opened my eyes. It really, really did. And I think what you've done here is great because once you've seen real life people walking around in different ways, you cannot unsee that ever again. And no matter what you think, you know. So for me, that was like the door opening moment. And hopefully you agree, Sam. My message and what my services are about are for a huge amount of people. It's not just for a certain amount of people. So I think it's a beautiful thing of like people are people. They're not numbers. They're not labeled. They're, like you said, they're real life people going about their life, spending, offering services. And I just like to comment that that's really cool the way you've done that. Um, and I just think it's beautiful, the variety of life when you see it and you really see it. I think it's a really beautiful thing, and the LGBTQ plus community is one example of that. And I just think it's amazing. I really, really do. The bravery of it. And I'd like to get to a point where it's not a question of having to be brave anymore. You know, I didn't maybe tell you something a little bit funny. One of my favorite ever things I saw was apparently it was real. It was two politicians in New Zealand, and after they'd had a parliament, one of them said to the other one, "Oh, are you gay?" And the guy responded by saying, "Until that question doesn't exist, then there's still work to be done." And I personally, I thought that was pretty inspiring. So thank you very much, Sam. I've learned so much from you today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. I sincerely appreciate that comment. And I'd like to unpack it a little bit because I think you said a few different things that are very important. Number one, one of the reasons why I've been going back and forth between community and market is because at the end of the day, as you very well said, we're people, right? We're husbands, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're cousins, we're the children of loving parents, we're the children of parents who do not understand us and have not had a relationship with us in over 20 years. We have family that are related by blood, and then we have chosen family that really love us and appreciate us no matter what, you know, exactly for who we are. And in this environment, right, that we're talking about right now, we're entrepreneurs, we're individuals that we have a product, service, an idea that is just absolutely brilliant, and we want to bring it to the world. We want to bring it to markets all over the world. And in some cases, we just want to feed our families, right? Just like any other human being. And to be subject to some of the ignorance and to be subject to some of the hatred and some of the discrimination and you name it, right? Like what Doug mentioned earlier today, that a member unfortunately didn't understand why, you know, the Global Chamber was involved in work like this. Well, because the Global Chamber is not here to judge, you know, who you are, who you love, how you live your life. The Global Chamber here is really just facilitating the process of creating these bridges that are important for all communities and for all markets to get involved. And if you have a member of an underrepresented, oppressed community uh, that comes up with an idea, has a product or a service that makes sense, then why not give them a hand, right? Regardless of what they do and who they love, to ensure that that product or service, you know, goes out to the entire world and makes this world better. I think that's very important. And number two, I think that the other comment that you made, and you know, I've been following your work. We've had some one-on-one conversations. Michael's goal, you know, to impact 1 billion people. It's an important impact goal. But he's never said I want to impact, you know, this particular group or this particular community. So I think that's an important part of the conversation today. When we have the opportunity to do this work and do it right and to interact with this community or any other community that historically has been discriminated against, then I think that, and I'm not here to preach the word of any one particular faith, but I think that's the work of a true Christian or a true Muslim or a true Jew or a true Buddhist or whatever your denomination may be, right? To love and care for another human being, What they do, what they don't do is between them and their divinity. And that aside, because that's not what the Global Chamber is focused on, then what can we do, to help each other out and make sure that we thrive in this world of global economies where things are a little messed up right now, but they've been messed up before. So let's get over that together and ensure that we continue to work together. So in the time, again, thank you, Michael, for your comments. In the time that we have left, we have barely 3 minutes left. I'd like to make some final comments. Once again, Doug, thank you, and to the Global Chamber team for the opportunity to have this conversation. We are a small group today, a very small group today, but I'm confident that in years to come, we will be a much larger group talking about, these topics. So thank you again. There's always got to be a starting point, right? But before we close our session today, I'd like to share with you a few things I'd like to leave you with. Number one, please always seek out opportunities to support members of the community, whether they are members of the community to you or members of a market. Please make sure that you find ways of doing that. Again, I'm here as a resource and happy to work with you to find those ways in a way that, as Coco mentioned, they're authentic and they don't seem like you're taking advantage of the community. Engage with the community, and it's exactly what Coco and I also talked about a minute ago. Have conversations with them, understand who they are. Nobody is trying to convince you to believe something you're not willing to believe. What we're seeking to do, just like any community that is typically discriminated against, is understanding. That's all. And a dignified and respectful relationship. We work, we pay our taxes, we contribute to society, our children go to your children's schools. In some cases, we go to the same churches or temples or whatever that may be, mosques, so it is important that we understand each other and we engage with each other so we can understand each other a little bit better and see each other as human beings. If you're a member of the community who is a member of the Global Chamber, raise your hand. We'd like to know who you are. We're not here to out anybody or to make your sexual orientation or gender identity public, but I think it is important that we find ways of engaging and together, creating opportunities for ourselves within the Global Chamber, and then to work with the Global Chamber and provide the tools and resources necessary to continue learning about our community. So engage, in whichever way you can. If you're not a member of the Chamber, we ask that you become a member of the Chamber today. Do not waste any more time. This and other topics are very interesting topics, and these are topics that you shouldn't miss. So please do that. And last but not least, invite others. If you already are a member, invite others to become members of the Global Chamber. And with that, we are right at the 55-minute mark. That means that our conversation for today has ended, but we hope that we can connect again very soon. Back to you, Doug.
Really, really well done, Sam. Really appreciate it. You and Michael both got me to think about, beyond women, which was my example in the beginning, and beyond this community and beyond really any historically diminished group, entrepreneurs are often diminished. For those of us that have worked in the corporate world, and when you become an entrepreneur, you get beaten up by certain people because you're trying to do something through your passion and your own uniqueness and your own innovation that is diminished. And that's also not right. And so maybe for me, that's how this all kind of wraps up together, is opportunity is opportunity, and people have ideas, and those ideas usually are different, are always different than what is the status quo. And those that break the status quo, that look at opportunities as change and opportunity going forward, are diminished. And that's not right. And so we exist, Global Chamber, to offer opportunity, to identify it, to work together and support each other, no matter what food you eat and what clothes you wear and who you love. And that all doesn't matter at all. It does matter if you're looking at opportunity. And I love Coco's question about, what do I do? How do I address this market? And I think, Sam, your response, or at least what I heard, was be authentic. Go back to the values that we all care about. I'm not sure what the answer is. You know it much better than I, but at least if we share values and we're authentic and we do what we think is right, then we have a community that'll give feedback on whether it hits the mark or not. And bottom line is we want to help and support each other to be more successful, which includes prosperity. Sam, thank you for bringing that. We got to make money. We got to feed our families. We got to have, sure, Michael's goals of impacting 1 billion people around the world. Those are important to have as well. And in the meantime, we need to have money to be able to sustain those dreams and to move each other forward. So thank you for bringing this topic together. How we proceed collectively is something I'd love to hear, Sam, your thoughts and everybody's thoughts. But let's move this forward, whatever ends up coming up next. But it does need to support diminished communities. They should not be diminished. And I love your question, Sam, about those politicians. As soon as people stop asking those questions, then our job is done. And believe me, our job will not be done by the time we die. We're going to continue to do this battle, all of us, beyond the time. It'll be our children who will still face this question, and their children. So let's continue this legacy. Sam, thank you for bringing us together today.
My pleasure. Thank you for providing the space, Doug, and thank you to all who participated, and wishing now that we can spread the word out, and distribute this to as many members within the Global Chamber. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Sam. Take care.